unpacking today's headlines. This is Souls and Liberty in Depth.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to In Depth, a production of Souls and Liberty. 69 days to go until the election, and that means getting close to the home stretch. Joining us today to talk about that and what can and should be done, especially by Catholics, is Lucy Trainer, who has been involved in election integrity efforts. Hi, Lucy. Thanks for coming on. Look, from an integrity standpoint, what is the most pressing challenge or issue when it comes to voting, in your opinion?
Thanks for having me, Gary. Yes, the most pressing issue at this point is making sure that our people get out the vote, that we actually show up during early voting, that we're sending in our mail-in ballots, that we're voting on Election Day. Preferably, we need to be voting prior to Election Day. There's a national push to make sure that that our voters are showing up early.
Do you think there is, that's kind of you just got to deal with the reality? Remember, after 2020, it's like, we should never be doing that. Should never be doing early voting and mail-in voting and all those ballot boxes and all that. Should make it to Election Day. Is there a bit of this is just the reality, folks, and we can't get beaten so bad before Election Day that Election Day doesn't carry us over the line? Is that really kind of the thinking, even though we've sacrificed the principle of joining in with election season as opposed to Election Day?
Yes, to a degree. What we have seen is that when people decide to wait till Election Day to vote, typically something will get in the way eventually. If you're in the Houston area, what if there's a hurricane? If you're somewhere in the Midwest, what if there's some type of tornado? So what we've come to a better understanding of is to encourage our people to vote early. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of national talk about how many who've already voted prior, and that all can be tracked. So if we make a big push early on, it certainly helps our numbers. And of course, then nothing gets in the way prior to Election Day. You've already done it.
Do we know from 2020, and which I know is very skewed because of the whole COVID thing and whatever steal or rigged or what it was. But do we at least have some data, whether it's factual or not, on what percentage of Democrats actually voted prior to Election Day compared to what percentage of Republicans actually voted prior to Election Day? Do we have those numbers?
Well, I think just going back with numbers, I think we have to just go back to the Republican turnout. They have a stronger push than we have had traditionally in the past. There's a lot of grassroots have always thought that voting on Election Day, and with 2020, there was a high pitch. Voting on Election Day was the way to handle it. And we got beat. We have to, as President Trump has said, we have to turn out the vote enough to where it's too big to rig. Right. We have got to show up in force. The Christian community has to be present, we have to bring our family in to the polls. We have to bring our friends into the polls. We've got to do a better job at turning out. And part of this is understanding that your vote does, in fact, count. There have been, after 2020, there have been across the country lots of legislative pushes from state to state to make voting more secure, to head off some of the things that the Democrats pulled nationally to give them a deep advantage when it came to the mail-in ballots, when it came to signatures particularly with the mail-in ballots. So we know now we've seen the success that has happened from these state legislatures coming together. And we have to understand that communally, nationally speaking, Christians must understand that your vote does in fact count. If you choose not to show up, you're giving that election, you're giving your state, your country away to the Democrats by simply not showing up.
Right. Yeah, no, it's a very strong point. I think people need to really pay attention to that and think, hey, this is, you know, what are you going to complain about if you weren't part of the process to try to save it? And, one of our guests earlier in the week or so told us, she said, that's the least thing you can do is show up and just vote. I mean, really? How difficult is that? But I do want to hit a point here and just let people know. We're going to get back to the religious dimension of this, particularly for Catholics, but all Christians. You've actually been trained by the RNC, Republican National Committee, to train other people on how to go around and protect our elections. Tell us about that. What is it you're doing? What is it you're training? Are there more of you doing that for the RNC? It's not just an entire Lucy project by herself, is it, to save the election?
Yes. No, there's a nationwide movement to protect our elections from legal, from just grassroots and working the polling locations. Yes, I was trained. I was trained in 2022, and I continue to cover the state, the state of Texas, on election integrity matters. What is important for everyone to understand, there's a lot of talk about poll watching, and yes, we need to make sure that we have poll watchers out. But first and foremost, our Christians, our conservatives have to understand that we have got to work the polls. So we have to be inside those polling locations, working the elections across the state.
And by working, you mean sitting there at the table with a Democrat who is checking people in and making sure that, the ID matches the name and the signature or whatever is the case. I know that all varies state to state, but that's Absolutely. What you mean by working the election, right? You're talking about in those school yards and our school houses and gyms and churches, parish halls, all that stuff where all the voting goes on. Get your butt in the seat there and make sure that you're watching, because you're part of that process, not a poll watcher, but a poll worker. That's a difference.
Precisely. And the workers get paid. The poll watchers do not get paid.
They get donuts.
The workers do what?
They get donuts. But they got to bring them.
Yes, it does make the day go a lot better. Yes, the workers are a critical component to a good election integrity map. Because if something happens there on the ground, you're able to put a halt to it. Of course, you're working with Democrats, and we need to have Republican representation at these polls. So it's the best place to stop it. And right now, this is the time across the state that activists need to be getting in touch with their county elections office, with their county chairs, to find a way to plug in to see if they need additional help to work the elections. And say a county chair is full, it's a mid-sized county, and the county chair has plenty of workers, then you ask, how can I would love to poll watch for you. What precincts are the most vulnerable? And the county chair, these local party heads, the local party leads would absolutely and should absolutely know where those vulnerabilities are in their particular counties.
So let me ask you this scenario: if you're, somebody who's a dedicated patriot, faithful Christian, you want to see justice done, so that's your motive ultimately for doing this, is just make sure everything is run fair and square. What if you live in a county that's red, even in a blue, that's blue, even in a red state, or, the person who's in charge of that particular thing? How do you go into, as a faithful Christian, how do you go into a precinct in downtown Philadelphia and sit there? I mean, there's this number of these things we remember from, we were in Detroit during the 2020. I know lots of people will disagree, but I think it was a steal. I know all the stuff we reported on, all the stuff going on down there, the machines, the counting, the putting up the boards in the windows so nobody could watch. When they did finally let them in, they had to stand 75 feet away. It just was not fair, which at least raises the question, was the outcome correct in Detroit and what was at the time Cobo Hall? How do you do that? You can go to your local place and you're a Republican in your nice, safe red county and go into your red district. Well, there's no cheating going on there. So how do you counteract the cheating with workers and watchers when, frankly, they don't want you there, and it's pretty clear, and there's not an awful lot you can do.
So, I mean, and that's precisely why we're all talking about this. Mm-hmm. Our people, our activists we have to be committed to go to these deep blue urban areas to volunteer. Again, a good county chair will navigate the waters and plug people in where they need to be plugged in.
Well, what if
you
he's
just
a Democrat?
have to understand.
What do you do if he's a Democrat?
Sorry?
He doesn't want you there. If he's a Democrat, he's not going to help you. He might have to give the appearance of sort of helping and cooperating with you, but he's not going to send you to the places where they're going to cheat or have weird numbers or whatever the deal is. I mean, this is really getting to like the teeth of the matter here. How do you can cover 98% of maybe the precincts all over the country, but those other 2%, that's where the truck backs up at 3:00 in the morning and 100,000 ballots come out, like happened in Detroit. We're really trying to limit a lot of the indiscrepancies, shall we say, to simply not allow the outcome to change. Isn't that really what we're doing here? So this is really important work.
Absolutely. And when you have a total Democrat-controlled precinct, you've got to have poll watchers there on the ground ready to watch. But again, this is why you want to have a Republican representation inside that polling location. Mm-hmm. It's our job Republicans, our groups need to do a better job at communicating to the public that this is a need, that working these elections, getting paid for these elections, that this is a need, and it has to be every single time. This is an important election here, this presidential election, right? So, but we have other elections that are happening in May. Then we'll have other elections that are happening the next November. So our municipal elections, our school board elections, all of these are equally important. And we have to begin to understand just like what the Democrats already deeply know, is that when the polls are open and when an election is being held, our side has to show up and work the elections and poll watch. Even for something like a bond election, we need to show up. We need to be present. We need to work the elections. We need to make sure as poll watchers that that all the procedures are properly being followed from a clerk standpoint, and make sure that our shifts are covered, that we've got the entire day opening and closing. All of these important windows have to be covered by poll watchers in our vulnerable precincts, specifically in our vulnerable precincts. But with the whole county, we need to have coverage in any given election. We have just simply have to make a shift in our thinking that elections are important every single time they're open. Every time an elections administrator calls an election, we have to show up.
Yeah, that's a change in the DNA of patriots. And,
absolutely.
It's a philosophical change, a genetic change, if you want to use that term. When it comes to poll watching, specifically poll watching, not the workers sitting at the table checking people in, but the people standing over there where the counting is going on and they're looking and all of that. What rights, I don't know if that's the correct word or not, but what do you have claim to as a poll watcher? I know in Detroit, for example, in 2020, they had the little bit of hand of Republican poll watchers they let in and then had them stand 75 feet away. They made them put their purses and cell phones in lockers out in the lobby. And nobody's going to steal them. The police are standing there watching them. But they had no cell phones. They had nothing. Can they make you? So let's say, excuse me, somebody's listening to this. They're being inspired by your ardent call to get involved and save the country and do it little here, little there, every little bit counts. And they get there, they want their cell phone, because if something goes weird, something goes haywire, they want a video record of it. And the dude in charge of the poll in a blue precinct says, nope. Or at the counting center, nope, you got to put your cell phone away. Well, there goes your ability to prove anything visually. Can they tell you to put your cell phone away and not record anything? Do they have that authority to tell you that? And if they don't, where's our proof when some guy says that? You can hold up a piece of paper and say, back down, buddy, get away. Here's the whatever it is that I get to have my cell phone and you can't tell me to put it away. Does that exist?
It depends on what the statutes are from state to state.
Okay.
So in some states, like in Texas, you are not to have a cell phone within 100 feet of the polling location. So you may not be on a cell phone. So absolutely, it's within the worker's rights. Even Republicans will warn people to not bring cell phones into that polling location. But from a poll watcher, and this is just with voters, but from a poll watcher standpoint, it depends on what the laws are in each state. So, for instance, in Texas, we have the poll watchers with the passage of Senate Bill 1 a few sessions ago. There's statutory protections now for poll watchers that weren't there otherwise. And again, this has happened across the country. So here, statutorily, we are allowed by law to see and hear any and all election activity. So we can't be told, for example, that we can't look at the electronic polling book. We can't be told as a poll watcher that you cannot go, that you have to stand within, say, in a 4x4 square, which did happen in one of our counties here. We had one of the election workers tell, and this was a Democrat controlled polling location, that the poll watcher could not move. But statutorily, they absolutely had those protections to be able to see and hear any and all election activity. And this
this is Senate Bill 1 that was passed and signed into law, obviously by Governor Abbott. So this is the first time a poll watcher is going to say, no, here it's the law now. Is that right? In Texas?
That's right. That's exactly right. And we train our people to come in with the poll watcher's guide, which is issued by the Secretary of State's office. That is right there on their website for us to print out. We take that in a binder that we have, and it's the law for us. So this is what we use to go and speak to the presiding judge, the judge that has the authority over that polling location, about any concerns we have. And we always have to put it back to the law. We have to put it back statutorily to what should not be happening or what should be protected. To add to that, we make sure that our poll watchers have affidavits. Affidavits are a very important part to making sure that evidence is recorded, and affidavits have to be it's the evidence that we use in court to make a case for what a poll watcher observed there on the ground. It's
almost mind-numbing, the level of detail, but still necessary, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if we don't have eyes and ears on the ground and these vulnerable precincts and these vulnerable polling locations, a vote can be taken here or there every single time. So we have to show up. Anyone who is frustrated about the direction of our country, about the economy, whatever it is that you're frustrated about right now, this is a great way to get involved, to be a poll watcher on the ground, get trained through your Secretary of State's office. If there's some kind of formalized training in Texas, there is formalized training for us. But you have to show up. This is how we make a difference in our elections, by 1, turning out the vote, 2, working the elections, 3, being a poll watcher. And you can both be a poll watcher and a worker all at the same time. You can work during early voting and then be a poll watcher on election day, or you work election day and work early voting, but also be a poll watcher at different times during early voting. So it's an important there's a synthesis in all of it that helps make sure that our elections stay guarded. We can't sit at home thinking that our vote doesn't matter, that our vote won't count. There's been a lot of talk on machines, that we can't trust the machines, that kind of thing. Right. What we don't want to do is let the Democrats win with that argument, even aside from whatever machine problems we have. We can't let the Democrats win that space right away by simply not showing up. It is critical that we turn out the vote. It is critical that we're guarding our elections. And without that, they win.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I want to just take a very quick break, step away from the topic for a moment, and tell our viewers that if you like what you're hearing here, very few people are going into this kind of level. The social media, conservatives, very few people are bringing you this kind of level of detail. And you need to know this level of detail, as Lucy has said, and I think we all, what happened in 2020, we were all able to go, wow, we should have paid much more attention to that. Well, here it is, maybe the final moment to be able to pay attention to it. So, pay attention to it. Poll worker, early voting, precinct worker, all of it, every step of the way. And wherever the votes are being tabulated, ultimately, in the county elections office, and every state does it differently. Matter of fact, various counties do it differently. But you got to be there too. You want to guard this, then you got to get out and guard it. Tweeting things out and putting little pictures on Facebook ain't going to win the day. So if you want to do that, please make a contribution to us. Click on that donate button down there and help us keep bringing you this level. We call this show In Depth for a reason, because not everything is just a 5-second meme. So Lucy, back to you at this now. I'd like to ask if you can, why do you have a sense of the urgency of the mission specifically for Catholics?
It seems that enough of us did not show up in 2020. We have to show up in force. And we have to understand that history should be our lesson here. We can't give this election to them again. If we give that to them again, there will be even more damage that I don't know that we will be able to recover from as a country and as the church. It's so critically important that our people turn out the vote and understand the need to get to those polls as soon as early voting is available.
Yeah, no, we were talking to a Protestant pastor a few days ago, and there was a kind of interesting dichotomy. Same result in the end for both Protestants and Catholics, but Protestants tend to, the ones who don't vote, which is about 50% or so, maybe a little less, just don't show up at all to vote, not even registered. And if they are, they don't vote. And his observation there was that, well, they didn't do it just because it's like, it's the Bible and Jesus will take care of everything. We don't have to be involved in this and roll up our sleeves and get our hands dirty and all this stuff. The Catholic reason, sort of, for not showing up is that, well, there's all this kind of confusion over whether, abortion is the worst thing or, climate change. And so there becomes this kind of intellectual confusion on Catholics. And so a lot of them don't vote either. About 50% of Catholics, for being a large number, the single one largest number, at least historically, of religious bodies that voted, only about half vote. Of Catholics. It's also true of Protestants. There's more Protestants than there are Catholics, but this is a big, large number. And you're Catholic, I'm Catholic, a lot of Catholics watch this. I'm just curious what your opinion is on why so few, and it is few. Half that don't vote is half too many that don't vote. Why do you think Catholics just I got to get my golf game going and it's not that big of a deal. And, I don't know, I'm confused over, climate change and social justice and abortion. The bishops don't tell me anything. So, it's not even worth it. I'm not going. Why do they adopt that attitude? Why do we adopt that attitude?
People need to think deeply about what their taxes look like every single time those bills come in. We need to be thinking about our groceries, how affordable it is, how much more expensive it has gotten under under the Biden administration. We wouldn't be in this steamrolling of of freedom had we shown up. We wouldn't be under these specific, this pressure cooker had we shown up long ago.
Right.
The Democrats have been able to rule the roost with consecutive administrations. Obama did a lot of damage. We have to begin to think and reflect about the necessity of getting involved and stepping up. We cannot complain when things seem irreversible, when we ourselves did nothing to show up. Part of our faith, people must understand, whether it's talked about at the pulpit or not, people have to understand that our faith must intersect with the public square.
Sure.
And much of that, of course, is at a minimum is voting. We need to be involved in our local civics groups. We need to be involved in our local Republican parties. We need to be involved in the local grassroots clubs. That's where we're going to be meeting new friends, coming into the movement, coming into the fold to make an impact on our communities. The best way, it may feel that many may feel that the federal government is an impossible thing to move or to make an impact on. Mm-hmm. And yes, that may be the case to some extent, but the best we can do is try to control in our local areas, our local spheres, our taxing authorities, our school boards, our mayoral elections, our commissioners' courts, our city council elections. These things are what matter. And this is where the Democrats have taken the fight to us. And this is where we have to step up. We have to step up in these specific venues, because that is where we will make an impact and where the fight is on a regular basis.
Right. Absolutely. Well said. I mean, that's it. Washington and DC and all the three-letter agencies and the seat of power is all glamorous and sexy and all of that and everything. But, you can't just pick up and start fighting that if you don't have your flanks secured. And the flanks are your downright locals, like you said, school boards, et cetera, local bonds, everything. And then working your way up to the state level. I mean, we could wind up in a situation here where, the outcome, whichever way it goes, turns into, at least philosophically and perhaps with some violence, something akin to sort of a civil war. I don't necessarily mean people going around shooting each other on some large scale, like, the 19th century Civil War. But, if you can't imagine that some of these states, blue or red, the more blue ones and the more red ones, depending on which way the election goes, aren't going to start talking about, seceding from the Union. We're not going to be ruled by that maniac dictator, and that charge could apply to either side. We're not going to be ruled by that communist, is what, we would say. And they're going to say, I don't want to be ruled by that dictator. So what is happening in your county and your state level might, depending on how things go, might actually be more important than it's certainly the thing you have the easiest access to. As you said, elaborate on that a little bit there, because then just before we go, I'm going to ask you, what is it people do to go become officially involved? Do they go to a website? Is there, where do I get my training? All that. But first, talk about like the importance of this. If everything went sideways after November 5th, and the other side's enemy takes the oath.
Well, again, we'll just have to keep plugging along. Perhaps that's a wake-up call to people that you should have come out. We lost the Senate because enough people in Georgia didn't come out to vote. Right. Do we want more of the same? Right. I will also add, before I forget, what's very important is that we also understand as Republicans to vote down the ballot. This is an important part of making sure that our freedoms get represented. If we don't go vote down the ballot, then we're giving away those local elections to the Democrats. They're coming for our sheriff's offices. They're coming for the district attorneys. We've seen this nationwide. We're witnessing this deeply in the state of Texas with these runaway district attorneys and sheriffs who won't do anything about law and order in our big urban areas. So it's critical that we go and vote down the ballot, even if you don't know enough, even if you don't know a thing about all of these specific candidates, because the Republican is going to be better any day in a general election than, of course, your counterpart with the Democrats. So our people must understand it's critical to go all the way down and to show up. And, again, I can't really answer how we will respond once election day comes and goes. It is just important that we head that off and that we don't even allow for that kind of scenario.
Yeah. Our
objective should be to win and to show up in these elections. In this election, we have to show up. So there's not even a possibility that they could take over for another 4 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Perish the thought, because that 4 years would probably be the end of it. And it wouldn't be just 4 years anymore. Okay. So just before we leave you, Lucy, I'm sitting at home, I'm listening to this, I'm like, wow, this lady knows everything. What a smart lady. I love Lucy. I'm sure you've heard that many times. Once the show is over, what do? They're sitting and watching it on their phone. They're looking at it on their laptop or their computer. Now what? Oh, that was great. Now what do I do? What do they do?
So I personally would, if you're on Facebook, I would go and figure out where those groups are that you can join. I would Google things like your local county party. So if it's Grimes County, if it's Hayes County, I would do a search for Hayes County Republican Party, Grimes County Republican Party, a Republican Party of Bexar County. Just a number of ways you can do that. And it will come up. You will see their website. Go to it. I'm sure many of your viewers are already on Facebook. You can go and like their post and you can actually call. There will be the information on their website to call the office. Right now, all of our county parties are up and running, active. People are there every day, all day with volunteers. So you'd want to call into that local GOP office and figure out where you can get plugged in. And you tell them you're new. I just have this urgency about the election. If you need a worker, I'm happy to work for you during early voting and election day. If you are already filled with workers and you don't need any more workers, then I'm happy to be a poll watcher for you. I would like to, you can also be involved at the precinct level and help your local precinct chair to help turn out the vote. I will also tell you the Trump campaign has got, it's TrumpForce47.com. They have got a whole system that you can merge into with getting several names and calling these names that are in your neighborhood, that are close to you within your zip code. You can make calls, figure out they're voting for Trump. If they are, you ask them, when they plan to vote, if they're planning on voting for, say, mail-in vote or election day or early voting. And then basically you ask if you can notify them through text when early voting starts. So it's a way to shepherd our neighbors, our voters who may not be as politically inclined as we are, to make sure that they do show up and vote again on early voting or election day.
So that's helping getting people out, but people who want to work and be poll watchers and all that. As soon as this is over, go locate your county's Republican Party, introduce yourself, and get into the mix. That's that one thing you do. And then everything starts spiraling from there, correct?
Yes, absolutely. And you'll make the closest of friends in these local GOPs. They'll be friends for life. Sure they will. But you all see the world through the same ideological and philosophical prism. So yeah, absolutely. Lucy Traynor, thank you for being on and giving us all the blow by blow, every bit of it valuable. People, I hope you took notes. And if you didn't, call your local county Republican Party and say, hi, I want to help save Western civilization.
how can I help? Would it be all right, Lucy, if we bring you back on in a month or so and check in on how things are going and what you're hearing of all of these efforts? It's the summer and people are still, kids back to school and wrapping up vacations and all that. But next week it starts. It's full bore, 64, whatever it is, day sprint to election day. So if we can have it back on, that'd be great.
Yeah, love to be back on.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for being on. That wraps up our in-depth discussion today. Please share this with all your friends and your family and get them to not only just vote, but get them to protect the vote as well. Coming to you from Houston, I'm Gary Michael Voris for Souls and Liberty In Depth. God love you.